So good morning from Tallinn, good afternoon to our colleagues joining us from Tokyo, and good day to viewers wherever you are in the world. Welcome to today's webinar titled Critical Underwater Infrastructure, Security and Protection in Japan and in the Nordic-Baltic region. Shared Challenges, Joint Lessons. Underwater infrastructure, such as subsea cables and pipelines, forms the backbone of regional and global connectivity, and in some regions is also important for energy security. These underwater assets are vital for our economies, societies, and national security. Yet, they are increasingly exposed to hybrid threats, sabotage, and geopolitical competition. Over the past 5 years, the Baltic Sea, the Taiwan Strait, and various other regions have seen a significant uptick in damage to underwater infrastructure. These have exposed vulnerabilities we have in various domains, which are often exploited as part of hybrid warfare. Today, we bring together experts from Japan and the Nordic-Baltic region, so Estonia, to first discuss the challenges of hybrid tactics and then potential policy solutions and cooperation opportunities to increase joint resilience. So we are joined today by Dr. Shin Kawashima, Professor of the Department of International Relations at the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the University of Tokyo, Mr. Marek Gov, Head of the Security and Resilience Program here at ICDS, Dr. Keizo Kitagawa, formerly a captain in the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Forces and currently Professor of the Faculty of Policy Management at Keio University, and Mr. Henrik Brax, Research Fellow here at ICDS. So I'll briefly outline the program. We will begin with interventions from each speaker lasting approximately 15 minutes. These will discuss their viewpoints and research. And after these presentations, we will open the floor for questions from the audience, which you can ask in the Teams chat. And for your information, this meeting will be recorded. So that's all from my side. I will share the screen now and over to you, Dr. Kawashima.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's my honor, a great honor to be here to discuss on this topic. Yes, I'm now in Tokyo, but in the morning I was in Taipei. So actually I discussed so many things about, including the maritime cable and other problem. So Taiwan's Ministry of Defense is interested in social resilience now. Yeah, they're talking about how does Taiwan keep some stability of the maritime cables and so on. Today I talk about the topic from the China's point of view and the East Asian point of view. Next page, please. And in this presentation, I will stress these points. First is about China. China is conducting comprehensive survey activities, within its own territory first. Yeah, land and air and sea, everywhere. But these activities are expanding territorial water, connecting water, and this China Sea go beyond the first island chain. This is China's way. Second, China's survey activities are expanding not only around Japan, but globally, maybe including the Baltic Sea. Yeah, and the objective may not be solely resources. Yeah, it could involve confirming the locations of this undersea cables and various facilities, especially cables. And the third, China's undersea drone, commercial drone and military drone, is advancing rapidly, and some drones are believed to possess the capability to severe undersea cables cut off. Fourth, the threat extends beyond internet cables. Other types of cables could become targets. Fifth, international cooperation for cable repair and maintenance is essential. Yes, especially in East Asia, I think. Yes, for example, Taiwan lacks undersea cable repair vessels. So therefore, cooperation from the country like Japan has the vessel. So as it's possible and it's important for us to go to advance the cooperation between Japan and Taiwan and other countries. Next page, please. So I explained about the details. First is about the cables. This is a chart, this is a map of the cables, maritime cables for the internet in this East Asia or in the Western Pacific. Yeah, so many. Yeah, Taiwan has 14 international and 10 domestic submarine. Japan has much more submarine cables with the over five reported cut annually by, I don't know. But anyway, some vessels accidentally get cut off these cables. This is approximately 50 times the global average. So high, okay, in East Asia, especially around Taiwan. This is, and there have been instances where TPE cables damaged by China, probably suggesting possible intentional sabotage. As I said, Taiwan lacks repair vessels, so it's a big problem now. So the Japan, it has that's heavy vessels, okay, to repair. Support. This Japan support over Taiwan is so important. Next page, please. And this is the chart of the maritime investigation by many countries. So green dot shows China. Okay, so China is conducting survey activities from the space, air, and the sea, and undersea, so every layers. Okay, so we know the news about the balloon, Chinese balloon, were flying into the USA territory. Yes, in the last year or 2 years ago. Yes, so the balloons are flown overhead, and the buoys are deployed at sea, and underwater drones operate on the seafloor. So there's some every layers. China launched so many vessels and satellites and so on, and the balloons, buoys, something, to get some data and others. Within China itself, an integrated national land survey plan, both land and sea or the air is being executed. As an extension of this, particularly active survey activities are being conducted in the East China Sea, South China Sea. Surveys are especially active around Taiwan, and China's Coast Guard is also intensifying its activity there around Taiwan and East and South China Sea. Next page, please. Yes, this is a chart of the Chinese survey vessels, its activities, like Xiangyang another Haiyan Diji. This is the name of the ships. Okay, in this China Sea, survey vessels such as the Xiangyang 22 are active, and the 4 is also active. In South China Sea, the vessel like an ocean geological survey, the Haiyan Diji in Chinese. Number 4 and number 8 are so active as South China Sea. So Japan and so many countries checks the activities of these vessels. These vessels are checking the cables, the position of the cables. Okay. So the and also the Xiangyang 22 is also actively operating in the Pacific Ocean. Well beyond the first island chain. And Minami Torishima. The most east side of Japanese territory, Marcus Island in English. Chinese survey vessels are conducting maritime resources surveys to investigate rare earth elements around Minami Torishima Island. Next page, please. This is the Jasin X is the new types of the commercial drone, maritime drone. Jasin is the company, to buy and develop and this new types of drones, all directions type, and also South China Morning Post reported China is said to have developed a maritime drone with advanced submarine cable cutting capabilities. This is the left side. Yeah, so there are so many open sources, open information intelligence about the maritime cables. That shows the so rapid development of China's capability on the maritime drone. Yeah, investigation and the cutting off the cables. Next page, please. Yeah, so under this situation, the most serious point in East Asia is Taiwan. Taiwan is now facing with a big crisis, not by military attack. There is pressure from China just on the so-called blockade. Yes, and the operational blockade by China toward Taiwan is involved with their Chinese activities to cut off the cables. So if so many cables are cut off, Taiwan will be isolated. So Taiwan is paying strong attention to the maintenance of the cables there. But Taiwan does not have the repair vessels on the cable, as I said many times. And also recently, Taiwan's Ministry of Defense launched one document about the social resilience. So the Taiwan is now very serious pressure from China. So Taiwanese government, persuade people to prepare, for such a blockade, this crisis. One of the points is cable. So this is just chart, and this is the pamphlet toward the people. Submarine cables and the other maritime infrastructure directly impact Taiwan's social resilience. This social resilience is now a top priority for Taiwan's Ministry of, one of the top, priority for Taiwan's Ministry of Defense, National Defense, how to maintain and develop Taiwan's social resilience through the international cooperation has become a critical challenge in East Asia. Next page, please. I know this news. Mr. Lin Jialong, he is the Minister of the Foreign Office of Taiwan. He joined the one meeting, the Risk Management Initiative on the international undersea cables between EU and Taiwan. The last month. At that time, Lin Jialong, Taiwan's Minister of Foreign Affairs, he had spoken about the cooperation with the EU on risk management, including the maintenance of submarine cables. So it's a serious topic on the maritime cable itself. So it's possible for EU and Japan support Taiwan and the other countries. There's so many countries which has damaged, on the maritime cable by China or I don't know, but anyway. So it is a very urgent, serious challenge for us. How do we keep the stability of the cables on the maritime facilities? Yes, I stop here. I talk about the China's intention and the Chinese project and the situation in East Asia. I stop here. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you so much for your very insightful presentation, Dr. Kawashima, especially this multi-layered approach. It's something I haven't heard of before, but it makes a lot of sense with the balloons, the buoys, and the underwater drones, which are currently in development in China. So next, I would like to hand over to Marek. If you could share your own slides, please. And then you can introduce the situation here in the Baltic Sea. And then later we will move on to Dr. Kitagawa and Mr. Henrik Brux for policy solutions. So over to you, Marek.
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you for our Japanese colleagues to have taken this time and presenting your perspective. So I will speak about Russia's strategies and techniques in the Baltic Sea, what considers critical underwater infrastructure. So in the Baltic Sea, the seabed has become a secondary battle space of Russia's war against the West. We tend to think in terms of airspace, territorial waters and land borders, but our societies and command systems also depend on a dense web of pipelines, power cables and data links that lie on the seabed and are for the most part quite lightly protected and poorly monitored. First, I will go through the recent pattern of incidents affecting critical underwater infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. Second, I will outline the main Russian capabilities and techniques that are relevant for this domain, from the shadow fleet to specialized deep sea assets. If looked together, then maybe we can also predict the future threats. The Baltic Sea is not just a shipping lane, it's a dense infrastructure corridor for the European Union and NATO. Gas pipelines, electricity interconnections, and high-capacity fiber optic cables tie together Finland, Sweden, the Baltic states, Poland, and Germany. Disrupting even one of these assets can affect gas markets, power prices, cross-border payments, military communications, and cloud connectivity at the same time. So when we talk about seabed assets, we are really talking about the enabling layer of both economic resilience and deterrence. This also makes the seabed attractive for hybrid operations. You can impose real costs and signal escalation risk, but still claim that everything was an accident or a technical fault, or at worst, the negligence of a ship captain. That combination of criticality and ambiguity is exactly what institutions like Hybrid Center of Excellence in Finland and NATO have flagged. It gives Russia a way to apply pressure and prepare the battle space while staying just below the legal and political threshold of armed attack. So I will cover very shortly most recent incidents. I will not stop on the responses and actions after that. This will be Henrik's part. But if we zoom in on the past 3 years, a clear sequence emerges. In September 2022, the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines were hit by underwater explosions near Bornholm, Sweden. That was a strategic shock. Three of the 4 pipes were rendered unusable overnight, and it demonstrated that someone, and almost certainly a state-level actor, was willing to blow up major gas infrastructure in the middle of a European security crisis. Roughly a year later, in October 2023, the Baltic Connector gas pipeline between Finland and Estonia and the unattended data cable were damaged in the Gulf of Finland. Investigators found a long scar in the seabed consistent with the anchor drag, and attention quickly focused on the container ship New Polar Bear. Then on Christmas Day 2024, the Estlink 2 power cable and several telecom cables between Finland and Estonia were damaged, again with the long anchor track and again with the suspect vessel, this time the tanker Eagle S, part of Russia's sanctions evading shadow fleet. We can debate in individual cases, but the aggregate pattern is hard to explain as random bad luck. The Nord Stream case is worth pausing on because it changed the mental map in European capitals. Technically, we know that several explosive charges were placed on the seabed and detonated near the pipelines. Politically, we know that this immediately raised questions about escalation, attribution, and proportional response. How do you react when a key piece of transnational infrastructure is destroyed, but the authorship is contested, and several actors have both motive and capability? From a strategic warfare perspective, Nord Stream achieved 3 effects. It demonstrated vulnerability that even flagship high-profile pipelines are not safe. It created long-term uncertainty and division among allies and experts about who exactly was behind it, which Russia has exploited in its information operations. And it normalized in a grim way the idea that seabed infrastructure is a legitimate target in great power confrontation. Everything that follows the Baltic needs to be read against that backdrop. The Baltic Connector and Estlink incidents illustrate a different technique, the use of ostensibly civilian shipping as a tool of pressure. In the Baltic Connector case, Finnish and Estonian authorities concluded that the damage was caused by an anchor dragged over the pipeline and cable. The track of new polar bear aligned with the damage zone, but the company and the flag state framed it as an accident. Formally, it was treated as a safety and insurance issue, not as an act of war. The Estlink episode looks strikingly similar, but with an even more political flavor. The tanker Eagle S is widely recognized as part of Russia's shadow fleet moving sanctioned oil. The ships track the 100-kilometer seabed scar and the scale of the damage point to at least gross negligence and possibly deliberate targeting under a veneer of plausible deniability. For us, analytically, the key point is that this shows how commercial and shadow fleet vessels can be integrated into a hybrid toolkit. They can threaten or damage critical assets while allowing Moscow to hide behind complex ownership structures and legal gray zones. Behind these incidents sits a broader set of Russian capabilities. At one end of the spectrum, we have the sanctions evading shadow fleet and other merchant vessels. These are typically older ships under flags of convenience with opaque ownership and often operating out of Russian or Russian-linked ports. They give the Kremlin access to platforms that are present in the right sea areas that can switch AIS, automatic identification system, on and off, loiter over critical routes, or conveniently lose an anchor over the pipeline and while remaining nominally civilian. At the other end of the spectrum are dedicated seabed warfare assets under the main Directorate for Deep Sea Research, KUGI. The best known example is the vessel Yantar, which sails under the cover of an oceanographic research ship, but is widely recognized by Western navies as a cable mapping and cable tapping platform. It can deploy deep diving submersibles and unmanned vehicles to inspect or tamper with seabed infrastructure. United Kingdom and United States have statements in the last 2 years which are explicit. Russia now maintains a specialized fleet designed to put undersea infrastructure at risk, including in the North Atlantic and High North, and by extension also in the Baltic if required. Beyond visible platforms, there are 2 technological trends we need to keep in mind. The first is Russia's demonstrated ability to build covered seabed sensors networks and use autonomous underwater vehicles. The so-called Harmony system in the Arctic, exposed by investigative journalists, shows how Russian entities have quietly acquired Western dual-use sonar and fiber optic technology through front companies and integrated it into a large undersea surveillance network. That may be focused on the Barents Sea today, but the engineering know-how is transferable to a crowded, shallow sea like the Baltic. The second is the use of electronic warfare and positioning manipulation. Since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, GPS and other GNSS jamming has become a regular feature over parts of the Baltic and High North, affecting civilian aviation and shipping. Ships suspected of Russia links have also been observed switching AIS off, spoofing their positions, and behaving as a ghost ships around wind forms and cable routes. This matters because it degrades our ability to maintain situational awareness, to attribute suspicious movements, and to respond quickly when something goes wrong on the seabed. In other words, Russia is not only exploiting physical vulnerabilities, it is also actively blinding and confusing the surveillance systems that we would rely on to detect and deter seabed sabotage. I will stop here and ready to take your questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Marek, and for demystifying Russia's tactics, how they're operating, how they're acquiring technologies, etc. So now I would like to move us on to the policy response side to hear how Japan and the Nordic-Baltic region are actually solving these problems presented. So now I would like to hand over to Dr. Kitagawa. Let me share your slide here.
Thank you.
Here we go. And over to you.
Thank you, Thomas. Wait a second. I have my friend have idea. Tele-home mixed. Ohayo gozaimasu. Yes. And Kawashima-sensei, welcome back from Taiwan. Okay. This morning or this afternoon, I would like to talk about how Japan views and protect critical underwater infrastructure, and how this connects to the work that Estonia and the Nordic-Baltic region are doing. This is my homework, which got from ICDS. So my perspective is that of maritime strategy and operational art. I will thereby try to show that infrastructure protection is not only a technical or economic question, but also a question of sea control, underwater superiority, and alliance cooperation. Next, please. Thank you. Oh, by the way, this Estonia and Japan, I asked ChatGPT to make it. Yes, I personally like it. Okay, so here is how I will proceed over the next 20 minutes. I try to cover the strategic aspect around, and then Japan, and then how to the policy response, and then to cooperation between us. Next, please. Yes. So if you look at the left-hand side map, this is how big the Japan is. Japan stretches over 3,000 kilometers, and it's like same like latitude, if you like. So it's Japan's quite huge in that sense. So, but both Baltic Sea and around East China Sea are relatively confined and shallow seas with complex coastlines. They are heavily trafficked by merchant shipping, as Marek mentioned, and fishing fleets, and the seabed is increasingly crowded with cables, pipelines, and other forms of critical infrastructure. In both regions, there is a presence of revisionist or adversarial powers. In Baltic, Estonia and its neighbors face Russia. Around Japan, we face People's Republic of China, Russia, and North Korea, which challenge elements of the existing security order. In both cases, the same sea spaces has to support three functions at once: commercial shipping, military operations, and seabed infrastructure. This creates a very tight and competitive environment on the surface, in the water column, and on the seabed. In such an environment, control of the underwater domain becomes central not only to naval operations, but also to the protection of infrastructure. This is a starting point for my argument today. And if you look at the left bottom side of the map, this is from the Defense of Japan, Defense White Paper. As you see, if like Russia or North Korea and China wants to come out to Pacific, guess which country they have to go through? Japan and Taiwan. All right, next, please. Okay, let me briefly recall two concepts from naval strategies that are useful here. By sea control, we mean the ability to dominate key sea areas and maritime routes, allowing our own forces and commerce to use them freely while denying constraining that use by the enemy. The other thing, underwater superiority refers to control the submerged domain, submarines, unmanned underwater vehicles, and increasingly the seabed warfare dimension in confined and crowded seas like the Baltic Sea and the East China Sea. Underwater superiority is often the decisive factor that enables of denied sea control. For both Estonia and Japan, this is not an abstract theoretical discussion. In our regions, underwater superiority is increasingly the practical foundation for protecting seabed infrastructure, for ensuring that cables, pipelines, and other assets can continue to function even in crisis or conflict. In other words, critical infrastructure protection has become part of the operational art of the sea control. It connects a naval strategy directly with economic security and everyday function of our societies. In this context, unmanned underwater vehicles, autonomous sensors, and seabed monitoring systems are increasingly important tools for achieving underwater superiority and protecting critical infrastructure. Next, please. Thank you. To make this more concrete, let me briefly walk through the three cases in and around Japan. Case one, I think this is going to be a bit unique for Estonia. It's a natural disaster scenario. The 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, when the magnitude 9.0 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami struck, several submarine cables connected Japan with the United States and other parts of Asia were damaged or cut. Japanese operators had to reroute traffic over backup routes, and some international circuits failed for hours. This showed very clearly that one major event can damage multiple cables at the same time, and that redundancy is essential. Case two. Detail is done by Kawashima Sensei, but I'm gonna go over these particular cases. It's also gray zone-like scenario next door. The Matsu Islands of Taiwan in 2023. The Matsu Island rely on two submarine internet cables to Taiwan's main island. In February 2023, Taiwan's regulator reported that first a Chinese fishing vessel, and 6 days later, Chinese cargo ship cut these two cables. For weeks, around 14,000 residents had extremely limited connectivity, depends on a small microwave backup link. Officially, intent is unclear, but strategically, it demonstrated how easily civilian vessels can disrupt island communication. Case 3 is a more recent pattern, repeated cable damage near Taiwan's main island. In early 2025, Taiwan detained China-linked cargo ship suspected of damaging an undersea cable off its northeastern coast. Taiwanese authorities reported several such cables malfunction every year, often involving Chinese vessels. Even without legal proof of intent, these incidents are widely seen as part of broader gray zone pressure campaign. For Japan, these three cases, natural disaster, ambiguous accidents, and the possible gray zone operation altogether illustrate the full spectrum of risk of underwater infrastructure in our neighborhood. Next, please. Traditionally, we thought about cable risk in terms of accident, fishing, and anchor incidents. But the cases I have just mentioned, especially around Taiwan, shows the emergence of hybrid threats, deliberate or semi-deliberate interference by civilian-looking vessels operating in legal gray zone and below the threshold of open conflict. So we also know that in other regions, including the Baltic Sea, there have been serious incidents, which you have mentioned. So I will cut this shortly. So when we think about underwater infrastructure, we must now consider the entire spectrum from natural disaster to accident, hybrid, and covert operations. Next, please. So what all these experiences have shaped Japan's national risk assessments? Our risk assessments consider multiple scenarios: earthquake, tsunamis, and typhoons, hybrid or gray zone incidents against cable and offshore energy systems, and high-end conflict scenario that could affect alliance communication and military command and control. Underwater infrastructure is now explicitly recognized as strategic asset in our national security and economic security strategies in our official documents. It is not only a technical backbone for telecommunications and power, but also a critical enabler for financial market, government function, and our alliance with the United States. Risk assessments aim to identify critical routes and choke points for submarine cables and offshore energy infrastructures, both within Japanese waters and regional level. At the same time, Japan wants to reduce vulnerabilities without escalating tensions. As a responsible maritime power, we seek to strengthen protection and resilience while maintaining open and stable seas in the Indo-Pacific. Next, please. Okay. So on this basis, Japan is gradually developing a set of policy responsive and protective measures. So I will go to each one of them from the next slides. Next, please. Okay, first, economic security as a policy response. Japan has elevated economic security in its national security strategy and related policy documents. The basic idea is that technology, supply chains, and critical infrastructure are deeply interconnected, and that disruption in one area can quickly produce cascading effects in others. Within this framework, underwater infrastructure, especially subsea communication cables and offshore energy systems, is designated as a strategic asset. Economic security policy, therefore, becomes a central protective measures. It provides the basis for prioritizing investments, shaping regulations, and coordinating between ministries and agencies to reduce vulnerabilities and ensure continuity of essential service in a crisis. Next, please. Second, legal and regulatory measures. Japan has been building a framework to ensure the stable provision of essential infrastructure services. This framework is not limited to underwater assets, but it explicitly including them. The tools include prior notification and screening of critical infrastructure operators, security requirements and audits, and obligations for incident reporting. The aim is to manage risk not only from natural hazards and accidents, but also from hostile foreign influence or interference. An important ongoing task is to clarify the legal status of submarine cables and related seabed assets, how they are categorized, which authorities are responsible, and what specific security obligations apply. In practice, this legal and regulatory framework function as a core pillar of Japan's protective measures for underwater infrastructure. Next, please. Third, governance of who does what. At the center, the Cabinet Secretariat and National Security Secretariat provides overall coordination on economic and national security, including infrastructure protection. Several lines of ministry, such as Ministry of Trade and Industry, and other Ministry of General Administration for Telecommunication, and Ministry of Land, Infrastructure and Transportation for Maritime Affairs have sector-specific responsibilities. At sea, the Japan Coast Guard and the Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force share responsibilities for maritime surveillance, law enforcement, and defense missions. More importantly, private operators, cable consortia, energy firms, port operators own, operate, and maintain the most physical infrastructure. The key challenge which we are still working to address is achieving truly whole of government and public-private coordination, sharing information in a timely manner, conducting joint exercises, and planning for contingencies together rather than the silos. Japan is very aware that governance itself has to be strengthened as a protective framework. Next, please. Fourth, Maritime Domain Awareness and Protection Initiative. Japan is working to strengthen what we might call protective MDA, surveillance and situational awareness that specifically supports the protection of underwater infrastructure. This includes patrol by Japan Coast Guard and Japan Maritime Self-Defense Force, which you can see in the slides, the use of air assets and satellite imagery, and integration of AIS and radar data. Where possible, we are also exploring the ways to integrate information from private operators into maritime picture. We are trying to include underwater infrastructure explicitly in contingency plans and joint exercise, so that scenarios where cables or pipeline are damaged are practiced in advance. A key task is connect peacetime monitoring with crisis and wartime concept of operation, so that we have clear understanding of who does what if incident occurs. In some areas, we are considering the development of dedicated underwater infrastructure watch function within our MDA system, although this is technically demanding and resource intensive. Here, Japan is also starting to explore the use of the UUV and other unmanned platforms as a part of protected maritime domain awareness, especially for inspecting and monitoring areas around key cables and offshore installations. Next, please. Fifth, resilience, redundancy, and repair. Monitoring is important, but it is not sufficient. We also need to ensure that our system can continue to function even if they are hit. One core protective measure is to build redundancy and diversity into cable and power routes, avoiding single points of failure and ensure that traffic can be rerouted if one segment is lost. Another is to enhance repair capacity and reaction time, including domestic capability for cable laying and repair. The faster we can detect damage, deploy repair ships, and restore service, the less attractive sabotage becomes a tool of coercion. These efforts require close joint planning with private operators, including agreements on how to prioritize repairs and share information during crisis. Together, these measures aim to deterrence by denial, making it operationally difficult and strategically unattractive for the adversary to target underwater infrastructure because the system is robust and quickly recoverable. In practice, specialized UUVs can play a role in a rapid damage assessment and detailed inspection of cables and pipelines, helping the operators to shorten restoration timelines and improve overall resilience. Next, please. Sixth, and finally, cooperative framework with alliance and partners. Japan works closely with the United States within the alliance on issues such as cable resilience, technical standards, and operational coordination. With Quad partners, Quad means India, Australia, US, and Japan. We are also engaged in initiatives to support secure and resilient connectivity projects across the Indo-Pacific. Japan is deepening its dialogues with European Union and G7 partners on economic security and critical infrastructure protection. There is also growing interaction with NATO or underwater infrastructure, especially in light of recent incidents in Baltic Sea. Looking ahead, One promising avenue is to explore joint tabletop exercise and simulation where underwater infrastructure disruption is the central scenarios. Such exercise could involve not only defense and foreign ministries, but also regulators and private operators. These cooperative frameworks are an essential part of Japan's protective posture. We see ourselves not only as a beneficiary or security provided by others, but as a responsible contributor to the protection of shared infrastructure in both Indo-Pacific and the Euro-Atlantic regions. Next, please. Okay. Let me now focus briefly on cooperation between Japan, Estonia, and Nordic region. This is mainly my idea. As I mentioned at the beginning, our maritime environments are structurally similar. Both regions involve confined and relatively shallow seas, dense traffic, and increasingly dense seabed infrastructure. In both, we face revisionist powers that may use hybrid gray zone methods against the infrastructure. Estonia and its Nordic-Baltic neighbors have valuable experience in dealing with hybrid incidents and in working with the NATO framework on undersea infrastructure protection. Japan brings experience in coping with major natural hazard in developing economic security policy and thinking about sea control and underwater security in the Indo-Pacific context. I see several areas for concrete cooperation, developing shared concepts for protecting underwater infrastructure in the shallow and crowded seas, exchanging views on legal and governance framework for responding to ambiguous incidents, and conducting joint tabletop exercise or workshop focused on underwater infrastructure destruction, possibly co-organized by ICDS and Japanese partners, maybe. In this way, Japan and Estonia can learn from each other and contribute together to the security of both our region. In terms of capabilities or industry, if you like, Japan brings a strong basis in advanced manufacturing, marine engineering, and science technology, including the industrial capacity to design, build, and maintain complex underwater systems. Estonia, for its part, is a global leader in IT, digital governance, and cybersecurity. Bringing these strengths together, Japanese hardware and engineering with Estonian and Nordic digital and cyber expertise would create very powerful combination for protecting critical underwater infrastructure. Next, please. Okay, so this is a key message way forward. So first, critical underwater infrastructure is now the front line of strategic competition. It sits on the intersection of maritime operations, economic security, and everyday digital life. Second, for Japan, protecting seabed infrastructure is increasingly understood as a part of sea control and underwater security in the Indo-Pacific. It is not separate from maritime strategy. It is embedded within it. Third, Japan is gradually developing coherent set of policy response and protective measures, national risk assessments, economic security policy, legal and government frameworks, maritime domain awareness initiatives, resilience and redundancy, and cooperative framework with allies and partners. In ICDS terms, our approach combines national risk assessments, maritime domain awareness initiatives, and cooperative framework with allies into a growing toolkit for critical underwater infrastructure protection. So that's, next please. This concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So thank you very much, Kitagawa-sensei, for a very good and very thorough presentation. And I was happy to see these concrete proposals as well on shared concepts, legal government exchange, and joint exercises between Estonia and Japan, and also outlining these complementary strengths that Japan has on the science and industry side and that Estonia has in IT and cybersecurity. So thank you very much for that. Now, I would like to hand over to our final presenter and speaker, Henrik Brax, a research fellow here at ICDS. So I will now go ahead and share these slides. I hope that is on the screen okay. So yes, over to you, Henrik.
Yes, thank you, Thomas, and good morning to everybody from my side. I will provide my views from Estonian perspective on securing and protecting critical undersea infrastructure. Actually, in many areas, we are quite similar to a picture from Japan as presented in the previous presentation. I will look to issues of, in particular, to issues of resilience, deterrence, and also some legal issues, both from the national and also from the international cooperation standpoint. Next slide, please. When we speak about securing critical undersea infrastructure, we have to keep in mind that it involves a high level of complexity. There are different legal regimes. The territorial waters and international waters have different legal status, and I will return to this issue in a later stage. Whereas undersea is a very difficult physical environment, both for surveillance and for repairs. The infrastructure there is mostly private owned. It's transnational between the states in case of the Baltic Sea, and also the disruption of undersea infrastructure. It's not merely a bilateral issue for two coastal states, because damage to data or electricity connections also affects many other countries beyond the immediate coastal states themselves. So responding to these incidents requires both civil-military cooperation with owners of cables and pipelines, private-public cooperation, and international cooperation. And in the case of Estonia, international cooperation has many formats. Obviously, EU and NATO responses are necessary in those situations, but there are also other cooperation frameworks, obviously. The cooperation between the Baltic Sea states themselves is one of such formats. For example, in this May, a memorandum of understanding on cooperation on the critical infrastructure protection was signed by the Baltic Sea states. It is focused on exchange of information, know-how, and joint initiatives for the protection of critical undersea infrastructure. But there are also even other formats. For example, in Baltic Sea and Nordic Sea states cooperate in the framework of restricting the activities of Russia's shadow fleet. There is a special shadow fleet expert group working on issues like sanctions, policy approaches to shadow fleet, and legal interpretations. Next slide, please. If we speak about responding to those incidents, the first issue I would like to touch upon is the question of resilience. We need to strengthen infrastructure and be better prepared for damage if possible. This involves several aspects. First, the physical hardening of a critical undersea infrastructure, as it was not originally designed to withstand intentional sabotage. For example, if new cables or new pipelines will be built, they have to be built considering the risks of a sabotage. And then, for example, in Estonia's case, the planned third electricity connection between Estonia and Finland, Estlink 3, will certainly take those aspects into account. And an issue already also mentioned in the previous presentation is the need for improvement of repair capabilities. I mean, the repair capabilities are very scarce, especially concerning specialized ships. So improvement of such capabilities is not just a matter of individual companies or individual states, but requires a more European level approach. Creating redundancy in energy and communication network system architecture so that individual cable disruptions would not cause outages is another important aspects. So these are all areas where cooperation between the state authorities and the owners of cables and pipelines, private companies or the state-owned energy companies is necessary. Next slide. Now, continuing with the issue of deterrence. Effective deterrence requires more than reacting to sabotage and provocations, but effective deterrence starts with preventing these events from happening in the first place. It includes issues like accurate situational awareness through improved surveillance capability. We need to send message to potential attackers that they will be detected. Ships of concern can be signaled that they are being monitored. So this includes identifying suspicious ships and restricting their activities. This requires developing tools to monitor suspicious vessels and behaviors, including by using artificial intelligence application. And an important part of this response is cross-border information sharing to identify potential threats. But beyond the situational awareness, there is also a requirement for increased response capability to potential incidents, and this includes also physical naval presence at sea. This can mean physical obstructing of a hostile activity, for example, like Finland did in late last year with Eagle-S ship, because after it had cut the electricity cable and 4 data cables between Estonia and Finland, if it would be allowed to proceed, it would probably also have cut other cables and pipelines in the Gulf of Finland and even maybe beyond it. This fact that it ensures that suspects will be apprehended can certainly contribute and will contribute to deterrence. So more pressure, more surveillance, and more robust action should deter captains and crews from sabotage. Now, a practical example of these activities in the Baltic Sea is NATO's Baltic Central mission, which was launched immediately after the mentioned Eagle-S incident late in 2024. The mission is designed to deter any further attempts to damage critical infrastructure in the Baltic Sea. It includes a number of assets to perform surveillance both from sea and from the air, including unmanned systems. And it is also an important political signal because it shows that the security of the Baltic Sea is a commitment for the whole alliance, not just the countries around the Baltic Sea. So as a result of this mission and also individual activities taken by the countries around the Baltic Sea, clearly the situational awareness picture of what's happening in our sea areas is much better now than before. And we can also say that there have been no incidents or no major incidents after the mission was started. But obviously such an ISR and maritime presence heavy operation is very resource demanding also in the long run. If we speak about the deterrence, there is an additional aspect to the deterrence by punishments. But here the key challenge is the difficulty of attribution. While establishing the culprit vessel can be straightforward, proving intentional sabotage is difficult and requires significant evidence. Attributing the act to state actor is even harder. So, for example, in the case of Baltic Sea incidents, there has been no official attribution to any state, so there is no one to punish. As already mentioned, the crucial element of hybrid operation is the ability to plausibly deny that happened. Such acts can be intentionally obscured as accidents or as actions of non-state commercial actors. There's always room for convenient narrative, claiming that the ship accidentally dropped anchor and unfortunately damaged a cable. Next slide, please. Let me concentrate also on some legal challenges or legal issues which have arisen in connection with those incidents. As already mentioned in the beginning, different legal regimes pose challenges. The different status between territorial waters and international waters, including the exclusive economic zones. In territorial waters, coastal states do have sovereignty and enforcement jurisdiction to take action against ships suspected of involved in illegal activities. However, in international waters, including the exclusive economic zones, the coastal states has minimal inspection and law enforcement rights. The good case of those complexities is the difficulties which have arisen in prosecuting the Eagles incident after the Finns detained the ship and the crew after cable disruptions. Finnish prosecutors charged the captain and 2 officers with aggravated sabotage and aggravated interference with telecommunications. However, last month, the Helsinki District Court dismissed the case, citing lack of jurisdiction. The court ruled that because the incident occurred in international waters, Finnish criminal law could not be applied. So basically, the flag state principle applies, and the responsibility for prosecution lays with vessels flag state, not with the damaged parties around the Baltic Sea. Finnish prosecutor has launched an appeal process, and the court ruling is not final, so the process is not concluded yet. However, the ruling clearly highlights the significant gaps in international maritime law, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. It shows how complicated the UNCLOS provisions are to prosecute cable damage incidents when they occur outside territorial waters, even if the economic impact and significant economic impact is felt domestically. It is clear that amending the UNCLOS or drafting new international treaties is not a realistic option, because it's politically and process-wise too complicated process. But there is room for interpretation and for shaping policies through state practice, including in the regional level. So it is important to work on this issue among like-minded, regional, and also beyond it states. Therefore, the Baltic Sea states should coordinate their actions and legal interpretation to such an incident, develop a common interpretation of maritime law, define clear intervention criteria, and build a shared understanding of how to respond to incidents. It is clear that the risk of sabotage will remain. It is also physically impossible to protect all cables and pipelines at all times, but the sailing of suspicious vessels should be made as difficult as possible, and not only on the Baltic Sea. As this requires challenging shadow fleet ships at every opportunity with inspections and diversions, issues like insurance controls, environmental controls, safety standard compliance, all they could be used to increase the operating cost for the companies managing these vessels, and therefore diminish their incentives to undertake malign activities. Another aspect connected with the legal issues is the reviewing of national legislation and its implementation. Countries need to take stock of national laws to check whether they have made full use of their rights under the maritime law. For example, in Estonia, changes to the national maritime area law have been made this year to give Navy right to use force in case of a need of a protection of critical undersea infrastructure, also beyond territorial waters. Another aspect is also updating national penal laws to ensure that there are sufficient penalties for intentional sabotage, because originally such disruptions were clearly viewed likely only as an accident, not as intentional acts, and Estonia also has undertaken that process. To conclude, I think we should follow the principle that no vessel suspected of sabotage or other harmful acts should be allowed to leave without undergoing legal procedures, and it is important to prosecute perpetrators even if legal grounds of that can sometimes be disputed. To sum up, responding to these incidents and protecting our critical infrastructure requires work on multiple strands, both nationally and on the international level, both on the regional level and wider in the European and with like-minded partners like Japan. Also, this includes increasing resilience, deterring possible sabotage by the denial, and also updating legal bases and unifying legal approaches to incidents and to our responses. this concludes my presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Henrik, for this. Also, very detailed presentation on Estonia's policy responses here, and especially thank you for highlighting the legal aspect and the difficulties with attribution, which is, of course, a part of these hybrid tactics, and that's why they're used. So I haven't seen... are there any questions in the chat? I can see there's a Q&A section. Okay, no questions in the chat so far, so I will go ahead and ask a couple of questions myself. And before that, thank you again to all of our speakers for highlighting the experiences of the Nordic-Baltic and the Japanese region. So first, I would like to go ahead and ask about cable repair capacity. So our Japanese speakers have mentioned that Japan does have this cable repair capacity. So I would like to ask if you can share some more specifics about how many vessels, for example, Japan has, which are able to repair cables, what the costs involved are, how expensive is it, and if there's limited capacity, maybe is there a big backlog for cable repairs in the region? And I would also like to take the opportunity to ask our Estonian colleagues about European cable repair capacity. So you've mentioned that it's been scarce so far. Which European countries do have cable repair capacity? Is there a backlog? And in Europe, are we looking at upgrading our cable repair capacity in the upcoming years, given these increasing hybrid threats? So first, perhaps over to one of our Japanese colleagues to talk about the Japanese capacities.
Thank you, Thomas. This is Kitaga speaking. Well, as a former naval officer, I just don't know the number off the top of my shelf. But what I can tell you is this is everything is privatized. All the cables, which is trans-Pacific, which I see in my slides, and every connected to like Taiwan or continent, everything is privatized. Major companies, there are two companies in Japan, which is one called the NEC, and one is KDDI. They both have the ships and their capacity to layer the cable and also pick up and repair. And it's at this moment, I don't recall the exact number, but the share of the global market is still, I think Japan share like 30% or something. It's quite large number. In Japan, it's very promising, but it's as you mentioned, there are costs. So in recent report says the government will subsidize the I think like maximum like half of the purchase of the vessels. As you know, these vessels are not cheap, and years to construct and so forth. So because this will be more. I think this is a turning point that Japan is thinking it's not a private issue, but more national security or economic security issues. Yes, back to you, Thomas.
Yeah. May I add some
please,
data?
Please.
Yes, actually, the NTT and KDDI, two private companies, have some ships. NTT maybe has 4 ships, and the KDDI has 2 ships to repair the cables. Yes, so yeah, 6 ships. Yeah, the Japanese position. Thank you.
ありがとうございます. Thank you very much.
Yes, arigatou gozaimasu from me as well. So I'd like to hand over to our Estonian colleagues. Perhaps you can talk briefly about the European cable repair capabilities and whether we're investing any more in this or what the plans are to upgrade our capabilities.
Yes, I also don't have exact numbers at my hand, but as mentioned, the repair capacities not only in Europe but globally are scarce. They take very long time to build new ships. I've heard that a lot of this fleet is actually quite aging and needs to be replaced in the next decade or two. It also has to be kept in mind that, for example, while it has been in the case of the Baltic Sea, at least been relatively straightforward still to get the repairs for the data cables. They are usually repaired within weeks. Let's say they of course take time, but it takes time, but it's a matter of weeks, not months. In case of electricity cables especially, it is much more complicated. For example, the latest is S-Link 2 cut after the Eagle S disruption. It took 6 months from Christmas Day, 25th December, until mid-June next year to repair. And it was only done because of additional costs, because not a dedicated electricity cable repair ship was used, but some other repair ship, which was when it was made ready to do it, to do these repairs, which required additional investments to it, also making the whole process significantly expensive. So especially on the repair side of electricity cables is very complicated, costly, and time-consuming process.
Yes, and I think for most of the cables we've been talking about, and most of the cables in the world are these data cables, but for these electricity ones, which there's a smaller number of, there's even less capability and capacity for repair, which of course makes it more expensive. I'd like to move on now and talk a bit about the redundancy aspect and ask about the role of satellites. I think especially when we talk about Taiwan, they're looking at upgrading their satellite capabilities to increase redundancy for these cable disruptions. Is Japan also looking at, I mean, maybe you can just talk slightly about how Japan views the role of satellites in redundancies.
Please.
Okay, about satellites. For Japan, I would say more than 99% of the communications are done by the underwater cable. It's in data. So satellite is rather backup or like whether the remote island, which the underwater cables are not connected. About Taiwan, I'm not too sure about it, but if you see the crisis like Ukraine, the Mr. Elon Musk or the Starlink provides, but perhaps this is a Kawashima-sensei's issue, but I'm not sure in same crisis the Starlink can support and order do the communication or not, because they sell lots of cars in China. I don't know, but in essence, I want to tell is satellite is really small portion of the communication, including the government and military communication. So and also if you talk about the satellite, it is mainly used on the operational assets of the naval ships or coast guards, also aircraft, not to the land in the reality. Back to you, Thomas.
Yeah. Yes, I add one point. Actually, Taiwan does not have enough facilities on the satellite for these instead of maritime cable. So recently, the Taiwanese government launched a new project, to catch up Chinese system on the satellite over the sea, telecommunication and others. So the Taiwanese government is very conscious about the lackness of the system of the satellites now. Yeah, that's my answer.
Okay, yes, and of course, it's very important to highlight that satellites, they make up such a small proportion of this data exchange compared to cables, and that they have limited capacity, which also decreases their effectiveness as a potential redundancy measure. But even satellites aren't perfect as well, because we've also seen the development of anti-satellite warfare, for example, which means that even the satellite backup can have its own problems. I'd like to move on now and ask a bit about other actors in both regions. So in Japan, mainly when we talk about these issues, we're focusing on China, but you've also mentioned the role of Russia and DPRK. And the same thing in Estonia or the Baltic Sea is that usually we're focusing on Russia, but also China has a growing role in the region. So I'd like first to turn to our Japanese colleagues. Perhaps you can just elaborate on the role of Russia and the DPRK in your region, and then to our Estonian colleagues, can you elaborate more on the role of China in the Baltic Sea?
Yeah, so it's a little vague, China's strategy and intention towards the Baltic Sea. Actually, they check the open sources. So, but anyway, as I said, China's investigation activities is done globally. Yeah, so China sent so many ships and balloons and others toward the Atlantic Ocean and other areas to check the position of the cables in the world. And also now that China's ships, trade ships, are going to all over the world now. So it's possible for these trade ships will do some dangerous activities. So it's difficult for us to separate the commercial ship from the other one. Actually, China has so many private soldiers. The private soldiers in they are not PLA. Yeah, so actually it is seemingly the private fisher ship or trade ship, but anyway, on the ship so many so-called private soldiers, so they will do something, about the so dangerous activities in the world. Yes, it's my answer. Thank you.
I may add on the in terms of security and military issues. Yes, that's what Estonia and Japan has really common. Like it's you got your Western Front and we got the Eastern Front. It's from post Second World War and unchanged. For China, as you know, they just start operating launch the third aircraft carrier, which is a huge flat deck size, and which is they're going on the like more high level of like a task group type operation, but also which we can't we have to watch is their survey activities. Their survey activities around the Japan mainlands and the Japanese islands are really quite active. It's simple because the sea is changing quickly, the environment. So in order to operate this submarine, including manned and unmanned, you need to have the information or the situation awareness of underwater and the water. So China is really tough. In terms of Russia is more activity is the naval Pacific Fleet. They do operate. They do the exercise and so forth, and their pitches is increasing. In naval activities, North Korea are really minimum. They only like to shoot the missiles on us. But the most fair things is now these countries are start cooperating. That's immense. Which is like North Korea send the soldiers to helping the Russia in Ukraine, and they're binding, and the joint operation with like the navies and air force of the China and Russia that started. So that's the new stage which the security challenge in this Western Pacific or East Asia as a really big concern and need to watch. Yes, I think. Yes.
Yes, thank you. And I think it's very important to highlight again the interconnection of the theaters that we have now in the West and the East, and it's extended into so many different areas, and underwater infrastructure is also one of them now.
So Thomas, the watch which I've seen like this summer, there's like your neighborhood, Norway's Navy and Royal Navies came to Japan with a carrier strike group. And I was invited because I was a former defense attaché to the United Kingdom when I was in active duty. And I realized, and then why are you coming to this region? Said you guys are busy. Oh, no. And their sense is Euro-Atlantic security is just connected to the security of the Asia and Indo-Pacific. So it's so what we talk is really relevant. I just want to add that. Back to you.
Yes, thank you for adding this point. We're reaching the end of our time, but we have one question from the chat. So maybe we can just finish with this one question before we conclude today's session. So this question is from our good colleague Sanshiro, and I guess this is for our Japanese colleagues. He's asking whether the policies of the Trump administration have affected practical cooperation with the US on strengthening underwater infrastructure security. So for either of our Japanese colleagues, if you'd like to talk about the Trump administration.
Yes, with the actual, there are levels of strategy, as you know, like political, strategic, operational, and tactical, and then technical. When I talk to the people in MOD or the Maritime Self-Defense Force, no change on the field, and I think this is really encouraging. It's what they do their normal business, and actually Mr. Trump just came and encouraged the U.S. forces in Japan. So I don't have no worries, and it's just they have more interoperable and cooperation as ever. Yes. Back to you.
Yes, I also do not worry about it, but as you know, USA manages the Pacific Atlantic area on the cable security, but I'm so worried about the island oceans in the Pacific. Yeah, so if USA is reluctant to maintain the cable on some maritime security in the Pacific Ocean or Pacific Pacific. So that's not good. It's not good for the island countries. Actually, US stopped USAID, and also US is. I really worry about the compact and other security issues in the Pacific region. If Trump is reluctant to keep the compact and other security cooperation with island countries in the Pacific, it's a chance for China. Yeah, it's massive.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear these differences that. On the military side, maybe it's business as usual, but if we look at USAID, it has actually had a real impact on this critical underwater infrastructure. I don't know if there are any comments that Marek or Henrik would like to add at this stage. If not, then I think we can conclude today's webinar. So thank you to all of our speakers for your great presentations. Thank you to the audience for joining us today. And I would like to wish you all a nice weekend. Thank you. Goodbye.
Ta-da.